My name is Keith Jackson, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Dean of College of Creative Arts at West Virginia University. In a normal year, we would have an event like tonight's in the Lilly, Valerie, and William Kennedy Creative Arts Center. But by now, you all know that 2020 is not a normal year. But in the College of Creative Arts, we have the ability to adapt. And that's what we're doing by offering you a brand new series, the Pandemic Proof Arts Series. As part of this, I would like to thank our partners in the Reed College of Media with Dean Diana Martinelli, WVU Career Services Director David Durham for helping in bringing this series to fruition. There are also people behind the scenes who I'd like to thank. Shannon Cunningham from the Reed College of Media, Julie Black from the TLC, and Octavia Spriggs from the College of Creative Arts. And now to introduce the series, the Assistant Dean of the College of Creative Arts, Shaliah Marsh.
Thank you, Dean Jackson, and welcome to the third of 4 presentations in the Pandemic Proof Artist Series. My name is Shaliah Marsh, and I serve as the Assistant Dean of Student Artistic Achievement at West Virginia University's College of Creative Arts. This series is presented with the hope of giving our students and all of us ideas about the tools, skills, and creativity that artists, performers, and creative minds have used to keep practicing their art over these past 7 months. While this is a webinar format presentation, you can ask questions through the Q&A on your Zoom screen. We will try to get to as many of them as possible later in the evening. And we will make sure this evening's presentation finishes up before the 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in case there is another event you are hoping to view at that time. Tonight, we are so pleased to have ceramic artist Jennifer Allen with us. And to host this evening's presentation, I'd like to introduce 2 of our wonderful faculty members in the School of Art and Design. Dylan Collins is Associate Professor of Sculpture with particular interests in fabrication techniques like sculptural blacksmithing and welding, as well as casting techniques using metal, plastic, and rubber. Welcome, Dylan.
Hey, thank you so much. It's really great to be here. I'm just so thrilled to have Jennifer Allen here as part of the Pandemic Proof Artist Series. And I will just say briefly that I've known Jen since I moved to Morgantown in 2008, and I found her to be not only an amazing artist and creative person, but really a wonderful teacher as well. So I'm sure that she will have a lot of awesome things to say relative to the kind of interrelationship between art and teaching and how they kind of mingle together.
Great, thanks so much, Dylan. And introducing Shaliah Marsh, who is a Service Assistant Professor and the Myers Foundation's Ceramic Research Associate. Shaliah was recently named one of Ceramic Monthly's Emerging Artists. Hi, Shaliah.
Hi, everybody. It's really wonderful to be with you tonight. I'm really looking forward to the conversation we are going to have, and am delighted to say as well that Jen Allen is a wonderful maker, a creative person, and a community builder. So looking forward to the conversation ahead.
Thanks so much, Shaliah. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Jennifer Allen. A ceramics artist of national renown, Jennifer grew up in Alaska, but we are so lucky to have her as a resident of our artistic community right here in Morgantown. I was speaking to a ceramic artist based in New York City a few weeks ago, and I mentioned Jen's name, and her immediate reaction was, "Oh my goodness, she's been doing such incredible things during this pandemic." The word is out. Jen, we are really looking forward to hearing about your projects.
Hey, everybody. It's so good to be here. Thank you all for that warm introduction. That was really quite special. And thanks, everyone, for joining up here. I wanted to start this little session with a bit of background. So I prepared a really brief PowerPoint presentation to share with you. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And then afterwards, we'll start the Q&A. So let's see, here we go. All right. So, like Michaela said, I am a potter and I live in Morgantown, West Virginia. This is a image of my house, and my studio is this little one-car garage that you see in the kind of off to the left there. And then this image on the left is just a shot of my studio door. This is what the studio looked like when we bought the place 2 years ago. So it took me a lot of time to get it kind of buttoned up and safe and a space that I felt comfortable making in. So this is my main studio space now. And then I have a kiln room off to the side. My work now is all stoneware, a dark red clay body with a white glaze, and then touches of color here and there. These are 3 different items that I've been making. And here's just a variety of different cup forms and decoration. All this work started at, let's see, last summer, so August of 2019 is when I started this body of work. So most of this work has been made kind of in a vacuum, because normally I'd be able to go out and share this work with people, but instead I've had to find other ways to communicate. Like Michaela said, I did grow up in Alaska. I was there in high school and undergraduate school. This is the university I attended. And while I was there, my teachers really wanted me to be a drawing major, but I got sucked into the clay studio right away. And the thing that I loved about the clay studio was kind of the community building that happened in that environment. And what I really also was drawn to was the idea of that community shared event that happens around pottery, sitting at the table or in somebody's house or out by the campfire. In addition to my academic upbringing, I also worked for a production potter named Chris Bliss for 4 years while I lived in Alaska. And so from Chris, I learned kind of an entry-level business building kind of relationship. I was her studio manager, and I helped kind of assist with every aspect of that studio. One of the things that really has inspired my work since I began was this trip that I made when I was a freshman in high school. I moved way across the country and was instantly in awe of the beauty and the landscape and the natural environment in Alaska. And so before I made this big shift in my work was very kind of icy, wintry, a lot of kind of glacial references, using all porcelain, a combination of wheel throwing and hand building. And I began to feel like the work was not warm enough, not inviting enough. And so my work slowly kind of shifted to the work that I'm making now, which is, again, a brown stoneware with a white glaze over the top. I worked at a fabric store for a number of years in Alaska, and so the tactile nature of textiles is something that I'm really drawn to. And since you interact with pots with your hands, I wanted it to be an experience that was memorable. And I wanted to vary up the kind of patterns and the textures I was working with. And so one way that, well, I'll get to that in a second. And also the first things that I was experienced as a young child was the stuff that my mom made around the house. So these are a collection of baskets that she made, some of the sweaters that she had made for me, and a quilt that she has. And then, of course, me draped in Afghans that she made. So a way that I can communicate that kind of difference in textiles and texture and pattern is by creating my own handmade stamps. So these stamps are made by carving and stamping other things into the surfaces. And to me, they are a nod to these different textiles that I've been looking at and these patterns that I'm inspired by. So when I start making, I start by using templates, much like a seamstress would when making a dress. And then I will assemble those templates into forms and then apply stamping on the forms. Then the forms kind of become more complex and I'm able to push volume into the form and expand the interior space. And here's just an image of the variety of different stamps on the surface. And then here's an image of all those pieces glazed. It's also important for me to consider every detail, and those details to me are really important. I don't want any hesitation anywhere in the piece, and so it's important that I pay attention everywhere. So then comes 2020. Everything kind of shifted. And so one of the ways that I was able to introduce my new body of work was I created an artist lecture series on Zoom called Jen Allen Shifting Ideas. And what the image you're looking at here is images of my work throughout the 25 years of making that I've been making pots. And this, I did 3 of them because they were so well received. And I think I had almost 500 people watch this lecture series. And this was a way for me to kind of share my new work and the exploration I was making with people because I wasn't able to do it in person. And the other thing that I did is I updated my website. And so here's just a screenshot of one of the pages from my website. But again, you know, like Dylan said, me relating to teaching, you know, I teach in so many different capacities. And this is a way that I could still teach, like through my website and through the video lecture series that I did, that I wasn't able to do in person. Next to responsibilities that I may have had finishing up my semester class at WVU last semester, I also have 2 kids who are school age, so a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And so I'm currently taking kindergarten classes and 2nd grade classes and learning alongside them. So that changes the structure and how I'm able to operate. And then recently I started making masks, and this happened kind of as an off-the-cuff question that I put out on Facebook, like who would be interested in a mask? And I didn't expect the overwhelming response that I got, but I did get one. And so I started up a mask shop on my website, and I started selling masks and making masks by the thousands. I've sold now over 1,000 and donated about 300. And here's just a kind of snapshot of all my friends across the country that have purchased masks from my mask shop. In addition to the mask making, I'm also heading up this Motown studio tour with 4 other artists. The host artist for this tour event is Shaliah Marsh, who's on the call tonight. Bryn Parrott, who is a wood carver and printmaker that lives in town. Lisa Giuliani, who's a fellow potter in Morgantown. Jamie Lester, and who am I missing? Myself, haha. So yeah, so we all open up our studios October 17th and 18th, which will all be outside because of the pandemic. But each of us is hosting guest artists. So you're able to come and see a bunch of cool art and visit the artists' studio environments to see where they make and what their creative spaces look like. And it should be big fun. You know, when the pandemic initially hit, we had all thought that we would cancel, but we really feel like we should go ahead with it. And it's mass mandatory, all safe social distancing practices. We really want to make this a fun and safe event for everybody involved. So that kind of concludes this little background presentation that I had for you. And here's some places where you can get more information about myself or the Motown Studio Tour or another collective I'm a part of called Objective Clay, and then my Instagram page. So. All right, I'm back.
Jen, thank you so much for sharing some of your work and your practice with us. One of the things that I know to be true about ceramics is that community is really important. And I know that you are a person who is really engaged in building community yourself. Have you changed any of the ways that you stay connected with the community, the ceramics community in general, or the community here in Morgantown?
Oh, the feedback. Gotta love it. Technology for the win. Yeah, so, you know, I'm a part of this clay collective called Objective Clay, and we meet, during the pandemic, we started meeting every week. And that was a way for us to all feel connected with each other, and that was healthy for a while. And then we all kind of wanted our Sunday nights back, and so we went back to meeting once a month, which we do now. But that kind of gives us a little bit of a connection that's more personal. And then, of course, social media is a way that I'm able to feel connected also. And whether that's healthy or not, I really like being on social media, and it's a way for me to market, also a way for me to build my business. So there's a lot of added benefits, a way for me to teach. There's a lot of added benefits of being on social media.
So Jen, I have a question. I was just a comment and a question, I suppose. So it was really wonderful to see your kind of more academic oriented drawings from when you were from your youth. I can relate to the experience of a lot of handsome academic drawings that kind of show the building of skill. Also, I too was seduced by the world of sculpture, much like you were kind of taken into the world of ceramics. So I'm interested, I think it might be useful for the students. I'd be interested in hearing you talk a bit about drawing, like how drawing informs your work. And then also, how does that, you also teach figure drawing in the School of Art and Design. So if you could just kind of talk a little bit about your interest in drawing and working with the figure, and if or how that kind of influences the pots you make.
Oh, sure, yeah. So I teach the figure modeling course at WVU, and the first day I tell every single one of my students that this class is going to be a lot like observational drawing. And what that means to me is it's really about learning how to see, and that really makes all the difference. So no matter what you do, like what medium you choose, whether it's charcoal or oil paint, or a computer doing graphic design, or you're in the science lab, right? You need to be able to learn how to observe what you're doing and be able to make decisions based on what you're looking at. And so for me, that's probably the most important part of drawing classes, and also the figure modeling classes that I taught. Yeah, I'm not sure. I did teach drawing at WVU. I taught the Foundations 1 and Foundations 2 classes also. And my favorite things to teach during those courses were the like crazy observational images of white crumpled up paper that's lit up, has a strong light coming from one side, because it really does make you focus. Otherwise, if you're not focusing, it shows in the work. So, yeah.
So Jen, I'm interested in knowing some of the things that you do to engage your customers and get them excited about what you're doing, especially given that over the last few years, you've not only changed the kind of overall presence of the body of work that you're making as a ceramic artist, but now you've introduced this line of masks that you're making. So could you talk about the approaches you have to engaging customers and getting them excited about what you're doing?
Yeah, so first of all, I did do that lecture series, and that to me was really helpful in engaging them, and kind of communicating why I made the big shift that I did, because it was quite shocking for a lot of people to see. And so then it just became a matter of keeping up with social media and making sure that my Facebook and my Instagram audience, that I keep those feeds active. So I'm regularly posting something that I'm doing, just to keep reminding people like, hey, I'm out here, I'm making stuff, and also I had to redo my website. I had to redo all of my business cards, all of that stuff, so that I could reach them. If they buy a mask, I'm sending them, a card about my ceramics, because that's really what I do mainly. And so maybe that'll pique some interest. I also reach customers through galleries across the country. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, all of my workshops that I teach across the country were canceled. So I was slated to go to a couple of, really prestigious art centers, and that got canceled. But so instead of doing that, I did like a little thing on Instagram Live once. And then I've just recently started doing some Zoom workshops. So I did one today as a part of the series, where I made a cup and a mask in an hour. It was fun. And I also did one for Temple University on Monday, and I'm doing one for Montana on Saturday. And I'm doing one and I did one for the University of Alaska Anchorage. So those also have been really great. And a good friend of mine, Deb Schwarzkopf, does these weekly meetings, workshops rather, where she specialize, or she'll focus her workshop on a specific form or a specific technique, and then she'll build off of that idea for an hour and a half, and she'll charge people to watch it. They get a recorded video of it. So I in the past I did these DVDs with Ceramic Arts Daily, and they are great, but I find that the market is a little bit different than when I started making those DVDs, right? People now are more interested in the 1 hour max kind of webinar kind of video thing, or they want like the 5 to 10 minute YouTube videos. They're not really interested in investing in, a 2 DVD, series of videos by one maker. And so that also has shifted kind of my ideas on how to reach my audience. So those are some of the ways.
Thanks so much. I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking specifically about what we might want our students to be thinking about in terms of marketing and business. So you were talking a little bit about, social media and postcards and websites and things, but and for me, those are things that all kind of make sense, and I put them on the to-do list. But for our students just starting out and trying to figure out how to be artists, how to run a business, how to do their taxes, could you offer up some advice for them, and pointers in terms of what they should be really looking at, and trying to learn while they're still students before they go out into the world as professionals?
Great question. I think one of probably the most important things, and a lesson I actually learned myself, and if I could turn back time, I would. But I started showing and selling my work before graduate school, and I then continued selling my work through graduate school. And what happened then was, because my ideas were shifting and changing so rapidly in a short period of time, in a 3-year span, I ended up getting a lot of galleries to stop showing my work because it was inconsistent, right? And they really wanted a consistent body of work. They wanted to be able to rely on me as a maker to make the thing that I had just sent them a month earlier. And so, unfortunately, because of that, I was not given opportunities when I left graduate school that perhaps I could have had I just waited. And so for me, that was a little bit tricky. Luckily, I didn't fall into the category where I continued making the same thing through graduate school, because I knew it would sell, and I knew that that's what the market was demanding. I didn't do that. Instead, I really kind of shifted and learned a lot through that time, and my work went in one way and came out completely different. But I think another thing is being able to kind of find your audience and knowing what your audience or who your audience is. Like for me, for example, when I was making the work that was the porcelain work, I knew that my audience wasn't necessarily well, when I was in Alaska, I went to this like bluegrass music festival, and I sold my work there, and the work did not go over well at all because the price point was too high. So I feel like it's really important to know who your audience is so that you don't wind up being kind of the odd duck, you know? And so the other thing is to make sure that your work doesn't have any hesitation in it. And what I mean by that is to make sure your work is pretty confident. Like, people can tell when there's hesitation and when you're unsure of something while you're making the work. That stuff definitely comes through in the final product, whatever that product is, whether it's a painting or a sculpture, no matter what it is. And so making sure that there's no hesitation. And also to be aware that just because if you start making a lot of money, you're going to start having to pay a lot of money in taxes. And one way to get around that a little bit is to have higher expenses. So for instance, I have been making more money in my business this year selling masks. And so I decided that I needed to buy an expensive kiln so that I could offset some of that cost, and I could essentially keep the money instead of having to pay as much in taxes. And so I think that also is important, because you can come to the end of the year, and this is for people who are just starting out, you know, you come to the end of the year, your taxes are due, and you owe like 5-10 grand in taxes. Well, where are you getting that money? So you have to be, you've got to kind of set and squirrel that aside, whether it's in a savings account, a separate business account. There are some things that you know, like setting up that business account would be helpful. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I could go on forever about it, but yeah, it's really complicated, and because it's so complicated, I understand why it's not taught in an academic setting, in the arts. I mean, like in the business school, yes, right, but in the arts, there's just no time to cover it all. And really, I think it's important in the arts to really learn how to make the best work and the most honest work, and the least hesitant work that you can while you're in school. And those kind of outside influences that your peers may have, like, you know, because they love something that you're making, shouldn't influence what you continue making so much. I mean, it really has to come from within. And for me, making this big change, you know, I had an audience that was really supportive, and so it felt really scary. But I also could tell that there wasn't kind of the passion in the work anymore, and it started showing in the finished product. And once that starts happening, I feel like it's time to make some kind of change. Yeah, that's what I got for that one.
That was awesome, Jen. Thank you. I have a question. You know, one of the things, you know, knowing you as a friend and colleague and fellow artist, one of the things I was always really impressed, you kind of talked a bit about your many roles as a teacher, which certainly I think many of us can relate to that it's not only what happens in the classroom, but thinking about how you relate to your peers in the field, your fellow artists, your students, your future students, the people you're recruiting to be, you know, friends for the future and fellow artists in the struggle for making things. But one thing I was always really impressed about with you is thinking about the many places that your art would take you with in what I will call the before times, like the pre-pandemic era that we all are yearning and excited for, being able to kind of think about traveling to different parts of the country and around the world to do demos and lectures and connect with fellow artists. So I think it might be useful for, if you don't mind, to kind of talk to the audience about how did you get engaged with that kind of lecture circuit? You know, what have been maybe some highlights of things you really enjoyed? You know, I think I'm asking because I've done some of those things, but you are prolific. Once again, more in the before times because we're all stuck at home,
Yes,
obviously. But
yes.
Yeah, if you could just speak to that, that would be great.
Sure, yeah. Let's see, how did I get into it? Well, kind of my incentive after leaving graduate school was I went to an art residency program called the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. And that's in Helena, Montana. And I spent those 2 years kind of trying to figure out how to make my work really visible, kind of nationally, if not internationally, but really I focus more nationally. And so I sent my work out to a bunch of different galleries to try to make it as visible as possible. And out of the 20 that I applied for, I got 10 of them. And so then I shipped work out to those 10 galleries. And then I just would get, you know, like a solo show here, solo show there. People would ask me to come to their university and give a lecture. Then I would have guilds invite me to come teach at their guild. And then I would have arts and craft centers invite me to come and teach there. And so I have kind of crisscrossed the US a number of times. And I think, you know, each place is a huge, it's actually my favorite way to teach is in these little workshop kind of situations. And the reason being is because I learn so much from my students in such a condensed time. Like it really is this back and forth exchange between teacher and student. You're kind of in this little microcosm, and the ideas are just firing off all over the place. And I always come home exhausted, but also super re-energized to get back in the studio and try something new, or, you know, something. I'm always trying to add something new into the mix to kind of keep me excited, keep me asking the question, what if, you know, what if I do this? What if I try this? But how I initially really got into that, it just was really organic. I mean, I can't really say. Some people do reach out and solicit these venues, and that's one way certainly of doing it. I feel really fortunate that you know, people came to me, and part of my problem is I have a hard time saying no. So I got probably more workshops than I needed to. I mean, my husband would say I probably was gone a little bit too much this year or that year or whatever. But yeah, and then teaching, I teach one class at the university, or I did, per semester, and that was in the ceramics department, and it often was figure modeling, although I did teach the majors once or twice, and the beginning ceramic classes, and I really enjoy that also. And whenever I go in to teach a class, I tell my students, I'm like, well, I'm a part-time teacher, a part-time potter, and a full-time mom, because that's really kind of how it works out. But yeah, I don't know if that answered all your questions, Dylan. I feel like I'm missing something.
No, that was great. It's,
Okay.
I mean, I think that, you know, it's certainly, I was curious a little bit about it too, because I would tend to agree that the times I've enjoyed it the most is when people ask me, you know, in the sense that there's kind of like some kind of engagement. And certainly that can be like based on alumni kind of connections.
Sure.
It can be based on like a particular media kind of thing, you know, even sometimes.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a lot of networking, and that's how a lot of these opportunities arise, right? And so
Yeah.
the more that you're out there and the more people you meet, um, and if you're, you know, a person that people like versus a person that they don't like, then, you know, maybe more opportunities will happen for you. I don't know. But I'm seeing some questions pop up in the chat.
Yeah, Jen, we have a question
Yes.
from Annie McFarland. She's asking,
Yes.
I'm curious to know how you remain engaged creatively during times of stress like COVID and life in general.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's constantly shifting the balance, right? Like I always feel like I have too many balls in the air. But I think that managing stress, you know, there's a couple of things that I've gotten into recently that's been helpful. Before the pandemic hit, I started playing tennis again, which I hadn't played since I was 15 years old. And I really loved that. Felt like such a great release. And so I'm doing it more again, but it's just not as regular as it was pre-COVID. Other things that I don't know. I mean, I also manage stress. I've battled depression and anxiety my entire life. So medication helps for those things. And I am using those kind of medications, and that certainly helps. Just trying to stay active. I mean, just trying to get in the studio, even if you just don't feel like it, just putting on your shoes and getting out there. And the days when I can come in and just play, like maybe nothing's really working out, I'll just start 3D sketching, which just essentially means, you know, ripping and tearing and putting pieces of clay together and stacking it on top of each other and building different forms, not worried so much about an outcome, but maybe, you know, in that act of play, something inspiring will, you know, happen. And that gives me something to latch onto for the next time I'm in the studio. I also, because I have to watch my kids most of the day, I do bring some of my work into the home environment. So I have like my sewing machine on my dining table. And so I can work, alongside the kids there. I also was making jewelry for a while, which I still am doing a little bit of, but that's another way that I can, um, yeah. I feel my best when I'm being creative and I'm actively making. And so the more often I can do that, the more happy and the less stress I have.
I think that is one of the ways in which you have embraced the pandemic, is that I see in your practice that you've made yourself stay busy and stay creative and keep pushing your practice forward.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And there were times during the pandemic, don't get me wrong, where I'm like, all I want to do is watch the whole um, five seasons of Schitt's Creek, and one right after the other. But yeah, there was like a little window where I just felt really depressed and couldn't make anything. And as soon as I came out to my studio and I started making stuff again, all of that fell away. And it's just once you can make that first step, I think the path is a lot easier.
So one of my students is asking a question, a kind of follow-up to this, asking, the days that are harder to be in the studio, do you find it is harder to make work, or is it better to keep making and be continuing to be active?
Well, the nice thing about ceramics is I can make something one day and then come in the next day and say, oh, what was I thinking? And like throw it in the slot bin. But for me, it is, so during this COVID time too, if I can't come out to my studio and be creative, what I'll do is I'll sit in my house and I'll think of something I can fix or something I can, so we bought this fixer upper, and there's always some project, and I get these ideas in my head of how I can make that space look better. And then I'm sketching out ideas of how I want to, construct the space. I'm searching on Lowe's and on the internet for how much it's going to cost and coming up with a budget. I'm calling my contractor and seeing what I can do myself and what he can take care of, and so, and the other thing is cooking. Like my husband is an amazing cook. And so I've never really had to cook that much, but now that I'm home with the kids all the time, I'm cooking more. And gardening, I could be more creative with the garden and with the plants I'm selecting for the house, so it doesn't necessarily have to be my studio practice of making pots that can keep me excited and engaged and happy. But it could be, creating a pantry in my basement because we have no place to store food. Which is a project I did this summer.
I'll field one of the questions for you, Jen. Could you mention how you know how much to charge for a workshop?
Oh, that's an excellent question. There's, this is really tough. And I will point those people to this article that Kristen Kiefer authored in Ceramic Monthly magazine, because she interviewed a number of studio potters, myself included, and kind of collected data on this exact topic. So how do you charge what you charge and why? And what she found is that there is really not much of a rhyme or reason. Whether you're an academic or, have been a potter your entire life and have never had any formal training, they both can command the same amount of money for a workshop. And now with COVID and with these online workshops, it's a lot different, right? So like my friend Deborah Schwarzkopf will charge $25 to $45 per workshop. But she gets like 150 people joining each one, and she does one every week. When I feel like oftentimes universities can be a lot more generous with workshop fees than, say, nonprofit places, where oftentimes I'll do a workshop there because I really believe in the place. There's one that doesn't even pay $1,000 for 7 days of work. But I love that place, and I will go there every single time they ask me. And so it's all kind of different. But in thinking about charging, because I am thinking about doing this online workshop myself and how to charge for that. Well, the first thing I would do is I would look at kind of what's out there at the same level of the work that I'm making, or what I'll offer the audience. So I'll look at Deb Schwarzkopf, perhaps. I'll look at Christina Cordova is a figure sculptor who's doing some Zoom workshops. So I'll look kind of at those people, and I'll sign up and I'll watch their workshops so that I have some kind of idea what they're offering. Because oftentimes you don't know like the extras that you get, right? Like in Christina Cordova's, you got a bunch of handouts, and you got access to the recorded video for a certain amount of time. With Deborah's, you get access to the videos, and you also become a part of a Facebook community where you guys kind of interact, continue this kind of discussion going and this critical discourse while you're making what she's been demonstrating. And so the great thing about the internet access that we have is there's so much information out there and so much research you can do before you actually step into the field, right? And so to really do your homework and see what's out there, then you won't have people, balk at, what you're asking for your workshop. Yeah. So, but I do have, like, I've set, my artist fee is the same across. When anybody approaches me about doing a in-person lecture or workshop, I always tell them my daily artist fee. And then that's just the honorarium. It doesn't include travel and all that stuff. And so that's always an additional thing. But, some people will reach out to me and say, hey, Jen, look, we've got $500. Could you come for a day? Will you do that? I know you charge more, but will you just come for a day? And this is our clay club. It's, putting these funds together. We don't have a lot of money. We would love if you could come. And so when I'm approached in that way, I oftentimes will do it, especially when it's students paying for it, because I think that's really important.
So we have another question. How do you balance making work that sells and making work that you're passionate about?
Oh my gosh, such good questions, you guys. I love this. That is such a tough one. Well, so what I do is, okay, to be real with all of you, I could make cups every day for the rest of my life and never make enough cups. And it's crazy. Like, my cups are $60 a piece. And it just, but I can only handle so many at a time, right? And so what I really like making are flower bricks and teapots and stuff like that. But the audience for those things are much smaller, right? Because the price point is higher. So how do I balance that? Well, what I'll do is I'll make 20 cups for a firing cycle, and I'll make 1 or 2 of the other thing that I really like, Not to say that I don't love every piece that I make, because I really want to be in, like, completely 100% in every piece that I make. Like, and when I mean that, I mean totally focused. That's what I love about having a creative career, is that I can completely tune everything else out and focus on what is right in front of me, and communicating with that thing, whatever it is I'm making, and only that thing, and learning from it, learning from the material, learning from the marks I'm making, learning from the composition that's evolving, learning from, the profile, all this stuff is, the form that starts emerging, and just being there in the moment with that thing. And I do that with every cup. It's not like I turn my brain off and I hate it or anything like that. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but it's a tough question. I also really love making earrings, and the earrings sell reasonably well, but not well enough that I want to make them all the time, masks. I've got to put the mask down, every now and again. So what I've done with the masks, the way that I run my mask shop on my website is I'll launch a collection, and then they're all pre-orders. So I'll have a dozen or 2 dozen sometimes fabric choices, and then people can select what mask they want me to make. So they're all custom made to order. And then I'll do that for, the turnaround time is about 7 to 10 days. But once I reach, I'll only leave the mask shop open until I reach the point where I'm overwhelmed and I don't want to make. So that's around 100 masks probably. And so once I reach that number, I'm like, gosh, if I don't stop now, I'm never going to get in the studio to make pots. I'm only going to be tied to that sewing machine making masks. So I do kind of manage things a little bit that way. And so the other thing that I've done with that is I've made it so that if people want to buy masks, they have to sign up for my newsletter, because I give a very specific link through my newsletter to my mask shop. And I launch the mask shop at 8 p.m. at night, because I know that if I launch it at 1 p.m., which I used to be doing, I would just be so jittery and nervous all day watching the orders roll in. So if I can do it at 8 o'clock where I'm winding down anyway, I'm a morning person, so 8 o'clock p.m., I'm cup of bourbon in hand and, whatever, ready to go to bed. So yeah, if I can wait until then I turn, and then in 3 hours, I'm done. I got to shut down the shop. So the window of opportunity for people to buy the masks is small, and I think that's fine. Because again, for me, that's a way that I can manage making the thing that sells, but also focusing on the things that I want to make, which is making pots.
Do you
Awesome.
think that the audience for your masks and the audience for your pots is different?
Some of it is, but a lot of it's overlapped quite a bit. And in fact, some of the mask audiences come over to the pots that I've been making, and I've started buying the pots, which I never expected to happen, but because I reached out to my friends on Facebook with this hey, what would you guys be interested? And really it was a way for me to use up my scrap fabric that I've had forever. And then, well, the first round of masks, that's all gone. And now I get to collect fabric, which is super fun. But yeah. And the fabric collecting is feeding back into the pots. I'm coming up with new stamps. I'll show you. Well, here's some of the stamps. So these are all the stamps that I use. I showed you, they're all handmade stamps. These are some of them. And I started making new ones based on some of the fabric designs that I had. And I also have a descent collar one that I started making. But yeah, I mean, they're really simple designs, but I have this batik fabric right now with all these triangles that I just absolutely love. And so, just, it all informs, goes back and forth, back and forth.
That's awesome. That kind of leads into this next question, Jen. You've mentioned many different mediums that you work with alongside clay. Do you ever combine them and create multimedia pieces, for example, like adding fabric to a pot?
No, not anymore. Do I do multimedia pieces? So I was for a little bit, I was making these stretched quilted paintings. So I'd sew up this like quilt, and I'd stretch it on stretcher bars, and then I'd paint it with clay and all this other stuff. And the quilt would have like pieces of a shirt in it. So maybe there's buttons in a section, but they were kind of not so great. So, you know, in undergraduate school, I experimented much more with multimedia stuff. My BFA thesis exhibition was all installation-based work. And there was a fabric and clay kind of overlap there, but it was all kind of installation-based. I also would dip fabric in clay and then stretch it on stretcher bars. I mean, or I'd dip the fabric in clay and then I put it around some kind of steel wire sculpture that I had underneath it, and then I'd fire that in the kiln. Yeah, a lot of dipping fabric in clay in undergraduate school. I'm not sure how I mean, whatever, it's kind of mixed media. But no, I feel like I just really like making straightforward pots. And there's, you know, maybe some Canthal wire, some kiln element wire. Yeah, that's mixed media. My earrings are kind of mixed media, but that's as far as I go. Yeah. Is there any other questions floating around out there?
Yeah, so we have a question from the audience. They want to know, you release your masks and collections. Do you do the same for your pots?
No, but I do only update my shop on occasion. So again, that's kind of a newsletter thing, but that I'll announce on Instagram and Facebook, and then I'll have a link in my bio profile, or a link directly in the Facebook post. But the way to get it most directly is the newsletter, because then you have a link directly to that shop page. And I send the newsletter out when like a little bit before I announce it on social media, to give that audience kind of first pick. Yeah. All right, it's getting close to time. I think we're going to do one last question and then probably call it a night, because some people like myself might want to watch something that's on TV at 9 o'clock.
I'll do the last question, Jen. Do you have any advice for graduating undergrads?
Oh, good question. Yes, take some time off. Take some time off, but stay active in the arts. Do not take time off and just raft all the time or kayak, which is what I would love to do these days. Don't do that. Make sure that you're active somehow and engaged in the arts. So one great example is a former student from WVU named Peterson, who is, since he's graduated, he went off and he taught English in Malaysia. And while he was there, he found a local potter, and he started teaching pottery classes to his English students, which was really awesome. He also did a couple of residencies. So he applied to be a resident at Sonoma Valley Art Center in California. He's currently at Red Lodge Clay Center in Montana. But even before you graduate, for those undergraduate students, I would really recommend going to some of these art centers. There's art like Aramont School of Arts and Crafts, there's Penland, there's Haystack in Maine. There's so many great craft schools that offer scholarships for young students. And I think the importance of that goes back to the networking that we talked about, right? This is where you're going to meet the people that you're going to be friends for life with, right? And so just putting yourself out there and doing as many of those things as you possibly can to stay engaged in this creative community that you love, and to gain further experience, you know, because I don't think graduate school is for everybody. So take some time off and really do take that job working for, a sculptor or on a jewelry bench or, whatever it is, do some of that if you can. And really, see if, because graduate school isn't for everybody. Like I said, it's not for everybody. I really thought that I wanted to teach full time, and realized once I did for a year that really wasn't for me, that I like part-time teaching better. So, yep.
Well, thank you so much, Jen. You have such an incredible way of being both cathartic and inspiring at the same time. It's really been
Thanks.
a wonderful hour spent with you. And thank you so much, Dylan and Shaliah, for your
Yes,
wonderful questions and inspiration coming from both of you as well. So we'll say good night and look forward to seeing your masks and your ceramics around town and around the world.
Awesome. Yeah. Come to the Motown tour, everybody, if you're in town.
Definitely.
Bring a mask.
Great. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Good night,
Bye.
all.
Night.
Thank you. Bye.